Hello, everybody. Welcome back, Andy and everybody. This is Lynn Otter back to do another episode of One Last Night. Last we left off, we were just in our little uh, cage ruminating about some past events. We just finished thinking about, or we're about to finish thinking about Alistair, our ex with the very villainous name. Let's see. All right, so whatever the spectacle that was running tomorrow, the prisoners they'd been gathering were the contestants, and this blatantly wasn't their first rodeo. I wasn't sure I'd be able to get much sleep tonight, but we're gonna have to think about somebody else. Who the heck is Cal? Oh, that was like his advisor or whatever. Let's think about Marshall. The whole purpose of Xavier and I going to Haven had been to see why they had sent someone for me. It was possible it was due to the emergency of the bandits stalking them, but that didn't feel right. It had to be something else. The main reason that came to mind was that they had information about Marshall. It seemed like a long shot, but I couldn't help but hold out hope. Over the past year, I'd done everything I could to try and find him. Even every survivor from Haven or the other camps that I met, I would ask about him. None of them had any answers. I scoured the whole city looking for him and came up with nothing, which is what kept me motivated. It was a lot stranger for there to be no trace of him than it was to follow a rumor to a dead end. He had to still be alive. He had to be alive still. I just needed to figure out where. Which once again brought me to the possible news at Haven and whatever that they might have uncovered. I needed to get out of here and speak to them. That is, if they were okay. It seemed like overkill for them to shut down the camp over 3 bandits that could easily be scared away or shot at with arrows. Xavier and I had encountered the silence at a relatively far distance from Haven, but maybe it had visited the area earlier? We still didn't know what its range was. A scout could have spotted it nearby and reported back, hence the lockdown. Another fated could even be in the area and prompted it. We'd done it for less in the past. I sighed. The theory is getting me nowhere close enough to finding actual answers. These questions were important, but could be saved for another day. Let's think about Cal. Yeah, that guy. Another person here who was important, yet I knew the least about. Though I'd met him once before, I wasn't sure I even knew his name was Cal until today. He and Alistair had remained in touch clearly, to the point he was now an assistant to running this group. Oh shoot! What did I do with my water? Here it is, off to the side. Oops, and let me do my timer. I'd heard plenty of talk of Paulus, often that they were a very expressive species. They were known to be easy to read because of this. Yet Cal seemed to show anything but emotion, his face neutral for the whole exchange despite everything that was happening. He had his own story I was keen to learn, starting with how he got those scars. It was unnerving to think that maybe they'd been the entry price of joining the group. They looked significantly like burn scars, and that would align with the name of the Ignited. I couldn't imagine he'd willingly give up one of his eyes, though. I shuddered at the thought. Was it some kind of initiation ritual? Was it forced upon him? Which brought me to that nod when we'd made eye contact earlier. I still wasn't entirely sure it was there, but I can't imagine why I would have made it up. He could have been with Alistair the past few years, seeing how he changed into the insane cult leader he is now. Given I was his ex, I doubted Alistair would want to talk much, especially considering things had ended in a huge, heartbreaking fight. Cal, on the other hand, might be the exact person I needed to fill in that gap and get some proper answers. I just had to figure out how to talk to him alone. Okay. And then Xavier. Aw. I found myself pacing as I thought of Xavier, worry spreading throughout my chest. Our last interaction, I couldn't manage to say a single word. I regretted it immensely. More than anything, I wanted to be there for the bat, to tell him that things would be all right. Instead, the last look he'd given me was one full of anxiety, and I just watched them separate us. In my desperate bids to be a hero, I was acting far from heroic. I'd let my emotions get in the way, and had floundered. Recounting my days with the bat, I had grown to trust him significantly. I regretted the skepticism and suspicion I'd shown him so much of. I knew I had to be cautious, but he had saved my life that day. If that wasn't the biggest display of trustworthiness, I didn't know what was. I doubted him for days, even though I was already convinced. The trauma of that bunker was real, and I knew it from the start, the look in his eyes telling me everything. Guilt, worry, and regret all flooded me. I needed to do better. For him. For myself. For everyone else that would need my help in the future. I felt myself recoil, the realization that Xavier was once again stuck in an enclosed space without any windows hitting me like a train. He had faced trauma after trauma since he escaped from that bunker. With a sigh, I tried to release the built-up tension I'd been storing. I'd see him tomorrow at whatever horror Wonderland turned out to be, and I hoped we could talk then. Oh boy. I crumpled onto the makeshift bed, letting out another loud sigh of exhaustion. Too much was coming at me too fast, and it was wearing me down significantly. There were still so many things I didn't know, so many questions I needed resolved that I just didn't have the answers for right now. I laid there for a while, thinking myself in circles. There wasn't anything I could do. There wasn't anything I could do. No more pieces I could properly fit together. It was like playing one of those horrible glass puzzles that had grown popular just before the end. So many pieces in front of me, and I had no idea how many were still missing. All I could do right now, it seemed, was hope. So I closed my eyes, pulled up the covers, and let myself slowly drift off into the void of sleep. Oh. I think I'd seen this background, like, as a post. I often found parks to be a place of comfort for me. There was something relaxing about walking the trails, seeing the myriad of strangers that had gathered there. Walking down trails, sitting on benches, flying kites. It was a place where you could go to enjoy some good time outdoors, despite the busyness of the city. In particular, there was one specific park by the lakefront that had always been my favorite. The water was close enough to the center green that you could dip your toes in it on a hot summer day, watching the clouds drift gently by in the wind. A few islands sat off in the distance, a painted ferry making trips back and forth across the water, carrying the passengers who wanted to visit. That's cool. It was cloudy that day, but still warm from the summer heat. The breeze sweeping in from the lakefront helped to cool me down as I sat on the park bench. I had wanted to be watching the world around me, spending time enjoying myself like so many others were. Instead, I was staring blurrily at the ground, tears clouding my eyes as I struggled to hold back the tide of emotion that still lingered inside of me. It had been 3 months since Alistair and I had broken up, and the pain still ate away at my insides every waking moment. I'd thought we could have spent the rest of our lives together. That clearly hadn't been in the cards, though, and I was left reeling from the abruptness for a long while. I'd hoped the park could cheer me up. It didn't work. I was reminded of the memories we'd made there instead. They were small ones, yes, but the memories were everywhere. Anything and everything, from us jogging along the lakeside to him buying me a bouquet of flowers one evening. I'd really thought he loved me. The tears I'd been shedding so often began to well up again, threatening to overflow. I remember how desperately I wanted to be rid of those feelings. I'd blinked rapidly, straining to keep the tears from spilling. I didn't want to be one of those people that cries in public. I couldn't handle that much attention right now. No matter how hard I'd try though. Once the emotions started, there was no way of stopping them. They just built up till the dam inevitably burst. I'd started sobbing, shoving my face into my hands to muffle the noise somewhat, but it didn't help all that much. The sound was reduced from a piercing cry of anguish to a muffled sob of regret. Oh, I missed the lion I was in love with, the man who had shown me so much love and affection and kindness. He was a piece of myself I wasn't sure I'd ever get back. I couldn't talk to him then. I couldn't talk to him then, too afraid my emotions would take over again and I'd do or say something regrettable. If I wanted another chance, I had to wait. As I was sitting there, lost in my thoughts and desperation, I hadn't realized I'd stopped paying attention to my surroundings. I hadn't noticed the people that had stared as they walked by, nor the sun that had slowly begun to peek out from behind the clouds. I especially hadn't noticed the man standing next to me, clearing his throat as he prepared himself to speak. Excuse me. I'd stopped, slowly bringing my face out of my hands. I thought you might need this. It's the image. Oh. I turned bashfully to look at the stranger, feeling the heat growing in my cheeks. Yeah, crying in public is embarrassing, though. And not often do you actually have a handsome stranger come to comfort you during that. Illuminated by the warm lighting from the sun stood a tall, large wolf. His fur was a shade of silver so light it almost looked blue, blowing gently in the breeze. A soft smile filled his muzzle, awkward at my delicate and embarrassing situation, but still presenting a caring nature. He was wearing a navy blue button-up, the topmost button undone. His outheld hand was clutching a white handkerchief that must have been in his breast pocket. What I'd focused on most were his eyes. They were full of concern, to be sure, but the coloring was unlike any I'd ever seen. Shades of blue, green, and purple danced across his irises, mesmerizing me in their beauty. I'd seen a similar coloration once when my parents had taken me on a trip up north as a child. They reminded me of Aurora Borealis. I'm sorry. I'd blinked, before my face flushed further in embarrassment. Sorry, it's just... your eyes. It reminded me of the Northern Lights. He smiled at that, taking my response as an invitation to sit next to me. No apologies necessary. I thought that might have been what you were talking about. Then why'd you sound confused? Oh, He'd blushed at my teasing, growing embarrassed. The reaction had drawn a small smile out of me in response. I'd bumped my shoulder into his, drawing his attention again. I was only kidding around. That same smile from earlier spread on his face in response to seeing mine. Oh, glad to see you're feeling better enough to smile. A much better look than crying into your hands. My cheeks reddened once more, my hand moving instinctually to wipe my face again. Here, allow me. He had raised the handkerchief again, slowly wiping the soft fabric under my eyes to dry the fallen tears before holding it out for me to take. I'm sure you can blow your own nose just fine. There was no malice or judgment in the statement. Oh, I was doing it a little teasingly. No hints of teasing. He was aware of my feelings and knew I'd feel too awkward to have him hold it for me. In just the first minute of us meeting, this wolf had shown me a kindness and thoughtfulness I hadn't felt in months, completely unprompted. I didn't know people like him really existed. Gently, I had taken the cloth and blown, only realizing I didn't know what the etiquette was after having dirtied someone else's handkerchief. I had decided on holding it, lowering my hands into my lap and staring at the crumpled thing. If you don't mind me asking, why are you so upset? I had remained silent, unsure whether to say anything. He'd taken notice that I hadn't outright refused, and pushed forward. I know I'm a stranger, but sometimes telling your problems to someone you don't know can help lift some of whatever burden you're bearing, even just a bit. If you need it, I'm here to help. It was those final 4 words that got me, echoing repeatedly in my mind. I had heard it plenty of times from my friends, and I'd known they all meant it. But right here, right now, hearing them come from someone I'd never met, it chipped a small piece off that sadness that had been consuming me, threatening to pull me down into it. If there were people like him in the world, then maybe things wouldn't suck for whatever was to come next, at least for a little while. So I told him. It all came pouring out of me like a flood. Everything from meeting Alistair, him asking me out almost 2 years together, until what had happened 3 months ago, and our relationship had hit its end. All of that time, all of that trust built, everything. Thrown out the window in a single freaking evening. I'm hurt. I'm scared. I don't know what to do with myself anymore. I wasn't sure when I started crying, but my tears had soaked the wolf's handkerchief. The worst part of it all, the thing that my heart keeps coming back to, is that I was so sure he loved me. Where did things go so wrong? Am I even worth loving? The stranger had been silent the whole time, giving me his full attention as I'd ranted. I wasn't sure whether I'd gone too far in my ramblings. It was a heavy thing to unload on the person, even a friend, let alone someone I'd met just minutes before. I had waited for him to speak, to tell me he was sorry he'd said anything and that I was too much. I had waited to hear him regret ever speaking to me, to see him get up and leave. If someone so close to me had cast me aside, what reason was there for this man to stay? Not a moment after that thought, he surprised me. I felt the warmth of his body wrap itself around me, bringing me in for a hug. His body was strong but soft, his fur silky smooth and smelling of citrus. It was comforting in a deep, intimate way, even before he spoke. You'll be okay. Don't place your value so much on others and rely more on yourself. You're enough, just as you are. There was a moment's pause before the silent tears turned into sobs. I clutched his shirt as I let everything I'd been building up out. Oof. All the sadness, all the pain, all the foolish, petty games we'd played. It was messy and uncomfortable, but he didn't care. He just rubbed my back comfortingly, making sure I was okay. It took an uncomfortably long time, but I eventually managed to compose myself. I'd released myself from the hug and took a deep breath, wiping my face once more with the handkerchief. Thank you for that. Really. That gentle smile from earlier returned. Don't mention it. Kindness can go a long way, and it's better to spread it than hoard it yourself. I'd given him a smile to match his, and he stood up, preparing to take his leave. Before I forget, take one of these. He'd handed me a small rectangular business card. If you ever need anything, even if it's just to hang out to take your mind off life, text me. I nodded, smiling up at the wolf. Will do. I squinted at the card, reading the small text. Marshall? His grin grew larger across his muzzle, flashing some of his perfect ivory teeth at me. Happy to help. Dorian. His tail flicked quickly behind him at my response. I'll see you around, Dorian. Yeah, see you, Marshall. With that, he turned and walked into the distance. It was impossible for me to know at the time just how significant that moment was, the impact Marshall would have on my life. I hadn't even considered where our relationship would go from there. I'd just known one thing. For the first time in months, I'd felt that, just maybe, everything was going to be all right. Aww. That iconic artwork from the main screen of the game. Interesting. So I saw that the clatter of something metallic resounded through the room, stirring me out of my sleep. A sense of longing had grown in my chest at the memory I had just dreamt. If only my problems now were as simple as they were then. Yeah, I'd take a breakup over the apocalypse most days myself. If only Marshall were still by my side. He'd know what to do. I sat up, stretching out my back with a yawn. I wasn't sure how long I'd slept, nor what time it was, but I was thankful for the peaceful rest. I remembered the noise then, drawing my gaze to the shutter at the front of the room. There was something on the floor near it. I grabbed the lantern from nearby, surprised it had lasted the night, and walked over to find a small metal tray. Oh, joy. Room service. On it was a bowl filled with gruel and a small cup of water, some of which had spilled onto the tray. Guess this was what my breakfast would look like for the near future. I hauled the tray back over to my bed, staring at it intently. I had to weigh my options here, considering there was a significant chance this meal could be poisoned. Even if it was only slightly toxic, the consistency of meals dosed with it would wear me down faster in an attempt to break me. The consistency of meals dosed with it would wear me down. I had heard horror stories on the news of prison guards who had done similar things, as well as alarm's about to break or go off here. I'd heard horror stories on the news of prison guards who had done similar things, as well as seen it done in countless media as an attempt to break the hero down. Was it better to take the risk of eating it, or to let myself starve? Or am I going to get a choice? My stomach growled, urging me toward the former option. If that was their plan, starting it today wouldn't make sense due to Wonderland. Yeah, fair enough. I wonder, is it going to be a choice? I'm curious. Let me see. Alistair had ordered Xavier's finger treated yesterday, leading me to believe they wanted us in top shape for the event. Fornicated. I'm just going to save here. Alright, it's probably the day of Wonderland anyway, so that's going to have to be next time. Thank you guys, any and everybody for tuning in. Hope you liked it. Hope you have a good day, good evening, good night, whatever it is for you. Again, sorry for the delays in uploads. Been a busy week, but hoping to get back onto it with Socially Awkward, Tom's Route, one last night, some more of this, and some Fatal Force, and of course one new visual novel that I'm going to be starting. I'm still debating between A Fall from Grace or Kingsguard. Ideally, I could do both, but with how tight my schedule's been, it might just be one. But hopefully both. Hopefully both. We'll see though. But stay tuned, and yeah, see you guys next time. Bye now, or take care. I guess either is good.